Hi, Harry Dent here on May 7th. Today I'm announcing a new investment service, micro cap stock fund. Okay, now before I get into that, just considering this whole fund and going over it and looking at the returns and the risk and stuff, it brought me back to one of the most important times in my career, the early 80s. I had come out of Harvard Business School. I did the obvious thing, took a job with Bain & Company, consulting to Fortune 100 companies in strategy. Great job, great company, but I realized a couple years in, this was not for me, okay? I was meant to work with entrepreneurial companies. I am an entrepreneur. It took me a while to realize that. So in the early 80s, I'm leaving Boston. I took over a struggling young company and then worked with one company after the next. And what I saw was something very interesting. I'm leaving a world, again, 1980, where the largest companies like Firestone and National Steel and Morton Salt I was consulting to are struggling to grow it all. They're in mature industries. They're having to cut costs. They're getting foreign competition from Japan and around the world. And then I walk into this entrepreneurial world where companies are doubling every year in a recession in the early 80s. That was the worst recession after the Great Depression. And you know, we're only going to see something like that or worse now in 2020 to 22. So I see those as similar periods, 80 to 82, a new emerging economy coming in while an old economy shakes out. So John Del Vecchio has a micro cap strategy. Now, what is a micro cap? These are very small companies. People think, oh, small caps are small. No, small cap companies are defined as 300 million to 2 billion. So typically about a billion, okay? Large caps are 10 billion plus. So micro caps are really these type of emerging companies. Of course, they're bigger than the companies I was working with and maybe the 5 to 20 million range back then. But this is what John Del Vecchio does. And these companies are coming into something new and they can be booming in a time like this, okay? So when this was brought to me by my partners, my first question, okay, we are in a tough time and we're still talking stocks here. So what do? I look at the track record, which is stellar, by the way, but I look at years like 2001 and 2008, the worst years in the last 2 decades. How did John do with this back testing strategy there? And the answer is he did very well. And one of the reasons, again, these micro cap stocks are in a whole different realm. But the second reason is he has a risk adjuster, okay? A risk index that tells him when to get conservative. And he uses it. And that's how he mitigates the downside risk of something that is normally very volatile. So when I really looked at the track record of this, I said, you know, this fits my definition of what people need in these tumultuous times and this transition from an old and new economy, particularly in the next few years. I mean, the treasury bonds are there for the safest haven. Everybody should have those, the longest dated. You can short stocks, non-leveraged, if you want to take a little more risk. But I'm always looking for alternative investments that can do well in up and down markets because that's the time we're in. So you're going to be hearing more about this in the coming days. Pay attention to your emails. This is something I think everybody should consider for a portion of your portfolio. It's not something you put the major part of your portfolio, but this is a promising, very well back-tested strategy that is alternative, that can do well in times like this. And, you know, we're seeing the markets, they keep holding up here, but I'm telling you, we are getting closer and closer to the crash of a lifetime. And so you need to be getting out of the traditional investments and stocks and things and into these safe havens and alternative investments that can do well when everything else is failing. And the definition of a winter season crash like this, and similar to 30 to 32, and somewhat similar to 80 to 82, is everything goes down. Most things go down, okay? So you really have to get serious, look at your portfolio, redesign it, get in the right places sooner than later, because when this crash happens, and look back at the May newsletter for people on our paid newsletter, we look at, you know, how fast and hard this next crash is likely to be. I am literally looking at 50% in 2 to 3 months when this hits. So you need to be safe, not sorry. Thanks for listening.